oral and maxillofacial surgeon, building trust and reputation in a digital world. My name is Anish Gupta. I am the owner and oral surgeon at Lion Dental Implants and Oral Surgery. I wanted to say thank you to Amos for allowing me to do this talk and talk about the subject that I really enjoy and have learned a lot over the last probably 8 to 10 years. Something I enjoy chatting with about people and probably talking their ear off about it. And I also want to thank you for giving me your time and attention to discuss it. So what we're going to talk about today, the objectives are we're going to understand the value of online reviews. We're going to talk about some of the misconceptions and hopefully dispel some of the common myths people have about Google reviews and Facebook reviews and Yelp and health grades and things like that. I want to offer effective and ethical review strategies, and I want to connect that to your clinical practice, to the trust that you build, to getting patients in through the door, like with search engine optimization, and ultimately referrals and getting patients to come to the office. And then hopefully we can kind of all together level up when it comes to online reviews. So who am I? So Lion Dental Implants and Oral Surgery is my practice. We are in New Hudson, Michigan, which is a pretty small town. If you think about Michigan, it's going to be about 30 minutes away from Detroit and probably about another 30 minutes away from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go Blue. I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon. I also like to think of myself as an average consumer. I shop at Walmart. I shop at Target. I shop at Nordstrom's. I use Amazon. I do retail shopping online. I use reviews. I use other people's reviews on a regular basis. And one of the issues I've had with some of these discussions about online reviews is that every time I hear something on it, I find that person speaking is trying to tell me why their patient engagement software is the best. But I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I want to give you my experience in doing this at the ground level, and hopefully we can create some practical ways for anybody listening to get more reviews or use those reviews in the best possible way. I don't have any expertise in search engine optimization or social psychology. I've read Robert Cialdini's Influence and Harry Beckwith's Selling the Invisible, and when the ADA or Amos puts out a webinar on online reviews, I tend to find it interesting, so I look at those. But otherwise, I'm self-taught. I'm not an expert by any means, but at the same time, I think what I can share with you will be hopefully helpful. So why does this matter, or why this matters? And it does. You'll notice that patients search online. Patients, customers, clients, whatever industry you are, many do so before they come in the door. First impressions happen before your first handshake. So if you've got a website, if you've got online reviews, people get an understanding of your practice, get an understanding of you before they actually pick up the phone or even before they come in. You can build rapport with your patients. You can build trust. You can close that case better when you've got that impression formed ahead of time, especially if you can curate that. Reviews are the modern word of mouth. I think many of my peers would say that word of mouth is one of the best ways to get patients. You have an excellent case on one of your patients and they go home and they tell their husband how good it was, and that husband tells their sister how good it was, and then you've got another implant patient coming through the door. Word of mouth is arguably the best form of marketing. Len Tao, he's the founder of Bird Eye. He gave a discussion and talked about how he calls this word of mouse, this reputation management. You're online, you're using your computer keyboard and mouse, and that's how you're using reviews as a way to get that same social proofing. All right, here's my unexpert analysis of marketing. I've got this nice pictogram here. Ancient advertising, you would just kind of stand out there and say, hey, this is what I've got. You can go ahead and then make mass print out things with the Industrial Revolution. Advertising, we get served ads in multiple different formats on the television, digitally on email, direct mail. And then kind of now where we're a position where we may not necessarily get served ads, or we may get served ads that are more specific to what we're looking at. So I don't really watch television anymore unless it's, sports, So advertisements are a thing that used to be a bigger part of my, for example, childhood, but not something that I, see when I'm dealing with, streaming services. Email is. I'll show you a slide of my Gmail on my phone, and you'll be like, "Oh, that's way too many unanswered emails." But email isn't the best way to get my attention. If there's something that's being served to me that somebody's trying to get me to be have a better website, or hey, I should use this particular product. I'm not necessarily looking for that. Those cold calls, or the cold call version of an email, I'm going to be probably unsubscribing from that. Direct mail, we still get junk mail, and we toss it away or put it in the recycling bin right away. Marketing has obviously changed with the advent of social media and the internet. I was taking out the wisdom teeth of one of my referrals' younger brothers. He was a college-age kid, and one of the side businesses he was doing while in school was, creating marketing through social media, or Instagram specifically. And one of the things he said really stuck with me was that Instagram is a new business card, and I didn't really buy into that. But there have been conversations I've had with people who I'm not close with, and we're networking, and at the end of that, he's not asking me for my number or email. He's saying, "Hey, what's your Instagram handle?" And interestingly enough, that person can get probably a hold of me and most of my information just knowing that this is my business's Instagram handle. The other joke that people like to say in the tech world is, where's the best place to hide a dead body? And the answer is on the second page of Google search results, because who goes past the first page of Google search engine optimization? You're hoping to be near the top, because that's where people are looking. Scrolling down even on the first page of Google isn't something we commonly do. And then something that I've learned from my peers, or the generation of dentists before me, is that they don't love the idea of selling their practice, or you're selling their cases, or marketing their practices. The idea of like advertising doesn't fit well in their mindsets when it comes to patient care, or healthcare. And I think the one nice thing about online reviews is that reviews don't necessarily feel like sales. You are technically marketing, but it's not as forceful or as interrupting as advertisements are. Reviews are also your reputation. You're not the one putting it out there. Other people are. Your patients are. And it's not the same sense of manipulation as you may sometimes feel with an advertisement that you're getting served on television, or an advertisement when you are searching for something and they're like, "Hey, you should buy my product here." Reviews are a little bit more organic, a little bit more personal. And just to close the idea of this topic, that hey, online reviews are good, and they are. They're an effective digital word of mouth, and we can all agree that our best patients probably come from word of mouth. It's important to note that this is not a silver bullet. Online reviews in and of themselves are not going to get you 30 new patients a month. It's part of that larger reputation building strategy. It's part of a larger digital marketing strategy. So online reviews, in combination with perhaps your website, in combination with social media, and then of course in combination with the actual clinical skills that you have, plus your referral base, is a way for you to build that trust for a patient, build that rapport. And the nice thing about it is we can build it even before they walk through the door. So let's talk about social proof. So one of the 6 key principles of persuasion, this is Robert Cialdini's landmark book, Influence. Obviously, there's been things that have been written and described since then. So this is just, I guess, the original thought of this is that, hey, we are able to persuade a patient, or we are able to build trust with a patient and say, hey, this is something that you should do, and I'm the person to do it for you. And that is just one of the ways. The idea is that, hey, if we don't know the answer to something, and for example, your patient may not know if you are the right person to do this procedure for them, and they don't know if your office is the place to have it done. Maybe they are anxious, maybe they are a clean freak, maybe they just are distrustful of all healthcare providers. And by looking at somebody else's viewpoint of it, or somebody who has gone through it before, somebody who they can look to for an answer. And if hopefully there might be multiple of those people, then they can be persuaded that, hey, I am going to go ahead and, pick up the phone and call, or I am going to go ahead and, say, yes, I am going to have this done because it's not going to be so stressful. It's not going to hurt so much afterwards. They will take care of me. I won't have to worry about, not being able to get a hold of the doc after hours, whatever their, hopes and dreams and fears are. The other thing too is that patients already want to hear from others. And so even if you just ask yourself, do you use online reviews for anything? The vast majority of us have used them in the past and may regularly use them. And so we already are out there seeking that answer. So, unlike other advertisements, your patients are already looking for this. They're already going to, type in, your office name if they got referred to you. They're already going to go and say, hey, I need a dental implant. Can you give me dental implants in Detroit, Michigan? And so they're already looking for that. You are not actually interrupting them. The social proof is then in the 500 other people who have given you reviews saying that, hey, this is going to be a good decision, and that patient, you can be okay with this decision. Just some social proof statistics. This is from a consumer survey by the company Bright Local. It's a couple of years old, but it's still, I think, very relevant. 93% of consumers read online reviews for their local businesses, in their city. 84% of those consumers trust them just as much as personal recommendations. So obviously we have a tribe that we will rely on, people that we know are like ourselves, and say, hey, what do you think of this restaurant? What do you think of this grocery store? Is it worth it? Is it worth driving to? Is it worth spending extra money? Is it, financially economical for me to go there? And you have that tribe of people that you can count on and trust. But we know that people will actually still also trust personal recommendations, even if it's from somebody else. Social proof just allows it to be multiple people. And one of the interesting things is that this is true even in healthcare. So one of the myths that we talk about is that our online reviews only for, your that trail in your city, or that, restaurant, downtown. And so the answer is that no, people still use online reviews for healthcare as well. The lone dancer analogy. So this was a video that came across my path probably about 10 years ago. And so it is at a music festival. I believe it's Sasquatch Music Festival. And there's this gentleman who is just dancing alone. He's exuding confidence. He's having a great time, but he is straight up dancing strange, and very interpretive. He's, doing somersaults, and somebody was like, well, that guy is being pretty weird, and I'm going to videotape this. So it's, so the humor is there, and I can, watch it later on and enjoy it. But, this guy is doing such a good job and is just, again, exuding confidence that somebody else is like, you know what, that looks fun too. And so this guy's probably dancing alone for like 20 or 30 seconds in this video. And then, 10 more seconds go by and somebody else joins him. And then a third person joins it, maybe 7 or 8 seconds later. And that second person to join creates that momentum. That's that social proof, like, hey, by himself, that person is, that's just a little strange. But, that guy looks like he's having fun. A second person's coming in. Now it's going to be a lot more fun. And the third person joins in. And then what ultimately happens is that, like, people are like, well, like, those guys are having a really good time. And the screenshot I've taken of that video is that people are like genuinely like running and rushing over because that song is so much fun. And this guy like created a small movement with it. And that's what social proof is. You've got, if one person says something, you can take that person at, and take that at face value. But now if multiple people say that, hey, this is the restaurant you need to go to, this is the dental office that you need to go to, then now it has a lot more social proof, and you are more willing to put yourself in a position to go there. So you may already know that online reviews are helpful. You're saying, yeah, I do buy into it. I'm gonna, watch this. How can I make things better? But the question is, why are we even having, this discussion then? And I think when I have this conversation with some people who are skeptical, they bring up a bunch of, misconceptions about it. So I just wanted to, quickly one by one go through the most common ones that people have brought to my attention. So myth number one: online reviews are just for nail salons, or for, insert a non-healthcare field here. And the short answer is false. It's just not true. And the easiest way I can answer that question is that, anecdotally or personally, I leave reviews and I read reviews for just about everything, right? It's Friday night and we're going to try a new restaurant. We are going to, come up with a short list, and then we're going to check out which ones would be the best to go to, or if we're in a new city. And now we're like, hey, my wife and I are like, the kids want to, do something. What is something fun for the kids to do in Boston, and then we can look at maybe some of the museums and what other people are saying about it. We've perhaps haven't been to that city and we don't necessarily know the answer, but we've got a limited amount of time and we have to make a decision, and we can't go do everything. We have, the choice of, one place to go to. And so personally, I am leaving reviews for, other places. Do I read reviews of, my primary care doctor when I'm searching for them? I do. And of course, we have the ability to have critical thinking as well. I'm not saying that we're going to blindly trust anything, but it's better than not using anything at all, which would definitely be blind trust. So if I'm going ahead and leaving reviews for my primary care doctor, other people are as well. Interestingly enough, healthcare is actually a top reviewed industry. I think we live in a world where we have access to reviews, so why not use them? But I also think healthcare is a space where it's hard to know that the provider we're going to or the clinic we're going to lines up with what our goals are. And all of us are different, and humans contain multitudes. And for some people, the financial side of it is going to be the most pressing, the most stressful thing. For other people, it's going to be the cleanliness. For other people, it's going to be, the safety, and for other people, it's going to be, to reduce anxiety. And so we have that ability through online reviews to evaluate that. The other part of this is that your potential patients are already reading your reviews. So I had my aha moment with online reviews probably in 2018. And I had a patient who's in the chair. She's there for a consultation for wisdom teeth. And, I'm generally a nerdy, awkward person when I was a kid, and I had to learn how to become socially, to navigate social situations. And so I make it easy. It's an analytical situation. I say, hey, I've got a couple of questions I can ask my patients. And so, depending on who it is, if it's a high schooler, we might talk about, their extracurricular activities. And if it's, a young professional, we might talk about, where they're working and how they like it, And so one of my go-to questions when I can't figure out something is, hey, where are you from? Where's home for you? And so this patient's here. And she goes, oh, Cleveland. And I was like, oh, okay, Cleveland. But where do you live around here? And I'm practicing just south of Detroit. We call it downriver. I'm about 40 miles north of the Ohio border. And my patient's like, no, I live in Cleveland. And I was like, oh, are you just visiting? And she said, no, I drove here for the consultation from Cleveland, which is a 2.5 hour drive. And a couple of years out of residency. I'm not anybody's Googling to get their wisdom teeth out. But I said, you drove 2.5 hours to get your wisdom tooth consultation. She wasn't even there for the procedure. She's like, yeah. I was like, how did you choose us? And the answer was, I looked at all the offices in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Columbus and Cincinnati and Toledo and Detroit, anything that was within, I think she said, a 3-hour radius. And she's like, I'm only going to get my wisdom teeth out once. I want to go to the place that I can feel the most confident about. And again, it blew my socks off, and obviously made me very insecure because now I have to deliver. But at the same time, it was a testimony for this person, and granted, she is the exception to the rule. But it was, a testimony to that she valued our online review, the things people said about us, to that high a degree that she would be willing to drive, the 2.5 hours to see us and back, and then again for the procedure itself. Myth number two, only upset customers leave reviews. So false with a disclaimer because it's not only upset customers, but there's an emotional component to it as well. Emotion fuels action, whether that's positive or negative. Positive memories are more likely to fade unless prompted. So I think gratitude comes a little bit harder to us than being upset. So negative experiences definitely stick around longer. But data disproves the myth, right? So if you were to think about when you're looking at a restaurant or if you're on Amazon searching for which stapler to buy, you're definitely going to see more 4-star reviews than you're going to see 2-star reviews. And so it's not just upset customers that are leaving those reviews. There are definitely people who are sharing with others what is valuable and what they've seen. So how do you capitalize on that positivity, whether it's a patient that's ecstatic or now relieved that they're done? And the short answer is, if you want to get online reviews, we got to somehow make it easy for them. Because if there are barriers in the way, then we want to lift those. Myth number 3, there are too many barriers for too many people to leave an online review. So also false, but subjectively. I guess the question turns into, what is too much of a barrier for somebody? So one of the things that I've learned is that 75% of Americans have a Google account. And then if you've got in the smartphone market, many of us have iPhone, which is the biggest in the United States, but Android is a second place with about 40% of the smartphone market. And additionally, if we're looking at Facebook, 68% of Americans have a Facebook account that they use. So whether it's leaving reviews on Google or Facebook, the majority of people will have access to an account where they can leave a review. And again, back to the original question, how do you remove those barriers? Just make it easy for them. Are you going to make them, click on an email, log in, and do it, or are you just going to have it on their phone available so they can just tap the stars for you? And the other common one that we see is that negative reviews are catastrophic. So I definitely have some colleagues who are like, I don't want to be regularly asking for reviews because what if someone leaves something negative? And the short answer is, yeah, that's a risk we're all going to take. I guess the answer to that is, what level of risk does that create? And so again, I think this is false generally. So there are obviously rare scenarios which are catastrophic. If you are, I don't know, really harming patients, or if you are not sterilizing your equipment and giving patients Ebola, and now you're in the news for that kind of stuff, and someone leaves a review saying that is a big hit to your reputation. But what I found, over the last, 7 to 8 years is the vast majority of negative reviews are not clinical, statements on even clinical skill. They're going to be miscommunications. They're going to be poor management of expectations. Many times they're going to be financially related, the insurance side of things or the reimbursement side of things, or their expectations of, oh, I got my implant done. I did not know that there was going to have to be a crown put on it as well. I didn't budget properly. So those are the things that we tend to see. And those miscommunications, those financial issues are not catastrophic. And we've got some ways to kind of mitigate that as well. An interesting thing from that Bright Local survey is that a 4.6 to a 4.8 is generally more trusted than a perfect 5-star review. Having a negative review in the mix does make you more authentic. Next question. So how do we respond to negative reviews? I have a short discussion on that, near the end, but the internet deals with this ad nauseum. There are so many articles and discussions about what to do. Negative reviews is something that anybody with a small business has to deal with, and they're just, I guess, a part of the game. If you have questions about that, we can definitely discuss that more. But I'm sure you could find resources for that as well. All right. So if you want to get good reviews, let's kind of define what that is. So good reviews start with good work, right? So good, also a very subjective word. Let's define that for your own clinical level, for your own practice, for your own personality, for your patients, for your own philosophy, right? Your definition of good is going to be different than the definition of good for the surgeon down the street. And so it comes down to a philosophy question or a core value discussion. What are your core values? We talked about, is the financial side of it the most important? Is it great, chair side manner? Is it going to be safety? Is it going to be cleanliness? Any of those things that you define as good. And all of these are going to be positive terms, but you have to define what's the most important, to you. You can't be, good at everything. And even if you are good at everything, what do you want to, communicate to the world that what you're the best at? All right. So your good reviews start with what you define as good work. And that's how you can get and curate your reviews to say that as well. And then just from selling the invisible, easy marketing, right? The easiest thing to sell is that excellent product, the product that sells itself, right? I would argue you probably still need marketing to let people know about it, but at the same time, you have a much smaller marketing burden in that case. For us as surgeons, we want to have an excellent service. Again, however you define that. The other part of the idea of good reviews or getting reviews is that it's like a great quality control measure, right? So you can get better with the information that you're given. So it is much more difficult to get good reviews when you're not doing good work, right? And that might not even be, an indictment of you. It could be an issue with the front desk. It could be the way the phones are answered. It could be the way that EOBs are not going out. It could be something that's completely unrelated to your practice, but you wouldn't even know it if you didn't ask the question. And sometimes reviews can, elucidate that. The other part of that is that if you're completely honest with yourself, reviews are a mirror, for self-reflection and hopefully a way to make yourself better. So a complaint that I've seen before is that I don't buy into reviews because reviews are a problem and there's too many negative things that can be said, or I'm getting a lot of negative reviews and I don't have control over that. But that's a way for you to say to yourself, hey, is something actually wrong with the way I do things and the way to improve yourself? I think good reviews should reflect your identity. We talked about, having different core values, but also your reviews can also focus in and hone in on one thing. So one of the things that we love to focus on in our thing is that we make patients not regret it as much, right? They get done and say, hey, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And, we're like, yeah, you should highlight that, in a review for us. So not all surgeons are the same. We have different philosophies, different core values. You can pick what your identity is going to be, and then focus on that. An added bonus to this is that you will actually start attracting the right patients as well, the patients who actually align with your values. So they, learn about you through your reviews. So for our practice, for example, I think of the fact that we just went non-participating with insurances at the beginning of this calendar year. And obviously it was a rocky road communication wise, and there were, some issues with patients who had seen us before, and now they're seeing us a second time for a second implant, or it might be the brother of somebody who had their wisdom teeth out, and things had changed, but we didn't make that clear to them. And so we might get a negative review from something like that. But now that we've had this going on for 7 months and some of the reviews, say some of these things, people know that about us now, or another thing that's popped up is that people will actually make that comment in the review, like, hey, this practice was out of network for us, but at the same time, we still really loved it, Another level up trick, I've got a couple of these in the presentation, is that you have a chance to respond to your online reviews. So you can emphasize what patients say in their reviews to highlight your own strengths. So the patient tells you that your assistants had excellent chairside manner, and you're like, what? That's exactly what we're going for. Thank you so much for calling that out. Somebody might say, hey, your front desk was so warm and welcoming, and they work so good as a team. And you're like, hey, thank you for noticing that. We really pride ourselves on the atmosphere we create, and we really pride ourselves on our teamwork. And you now are nudging that future, patient to what is actually important. And one of the things took me a long time to realize about reviews is that it's hard for a patient to know your level of skill. Are you the person who does like a better extraction than somebody else? Or, as a dentist in school or in training when you're doing a restoration, how does the that patient in the chair know you did a good job. Like obviously, if there's glaring errors or if something hurts or if they can feel something with their tongue, they're going to be like, "Oh, this wasn't great." But generally speaking, they don't know your level of skill, and so you have to use different surrogates for that. How do they judge that experience and whether that's going to be the atmosphere you create. The other tangible things that I don't have a citation for this, but I was told once that the dentist office that people think are the most skilled or have the most expertise are actually the ones they think are the cleanest, right? So you can't judge the skill of the dentist, but you can use something like a clean office to be like, oh yeah, they do a good job sterilizing equipment because we don't have dust bunnies everywhere. Or vice versa, you do have dust bunnies everywhere, and they're like, oh, is this the place I want to go? A friendly front desk, right? Again, another surrogate for, hey, this is a place I want to be at. First impressions are critical. That first phone call, walking in through the door. And then if somebody were to write that in a review, now you've got that rapport built before somebody else walks in through the door. Common theme in treatment presentations is under promise and over deliver. Another thing I learned about reviews, it took me a while to figure this out, is that when a patient's coming to you as a dentist or a surgeon, they're not able to accurately judge your skill level or your expertise. So they have to find other surrogates to do that. They can judge the experience. They can judge the cleanliness of the office. And that was something I learned that I don't have a citation for, but a lot of people view the skill or expertise of an office based on how clean the place is. And so, a patient can't judge that technical skills, but they might be like, hey, this place is, spotless. And so they must do a good job with sterilization. They pay attention to detail, and vice versa. So if you've got dust bunnies, piling up in a corner, that might give somebody a negative experience. And if they wrote a review on that, that would then be shared with the internet. Another surrogate would be like the friendly front office, front desk, where you make a first impression for the handshake or patient intake or the first phone call, or walking in the door and how they're greeted. And that can be like, hey, this place has lowered my anxiety. And so, they care. One thing we always learned with treatment presentation is that your goal is to under promise and over deliver. And so we all have had that patient that tells us, hey, this wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, where they were expecting worse. And then you do work that that gives them, a sense of relief or a better job than what they were hoping for. And then guess what? You tell that patient, hey, can you be an author and put that in writing so that other people can see that as well? These are just all ways that, hey, these are the good reviews that we're hoping for. And then just some meat and potatoes with reviews before we get to kind of the practical ways to make it happen. So the first question is, where are patients looking for reviews? And I just want to pose a question back at you as a listener: is where do you look for reviews? If you're going to buy something, if you're going to go to a restaurant, how do you look for that? And the short answer is Google. So 96% of all search traffic is on Google. And you can also ask yourself that same question: is how often are you using other search engines, Bing or Yahoo? So when it comes to reviews, Google is king. Everything else is a distant second place. Yelp is a distant second place. Health Grades is a distant second place. TripAdvisor, Facebook, all second place when it comes to, hey, this is how we're going to evaluate the reviews. I do think it is a curiosity now with this boom of AI that many of us are starting to use ChatGPT or Gemini kind of as a first source for online searches, but I don't think we're at that point just yet where people are going to go ahead and transition over. It probably will change the landscape of reviews as well, but for now, Google is king. The next question is, what makes online reviews trustworthy? So when you look at an online review, when you see something on Amazon or on Google, what makes you say, okay, I believe this, right? I think the short answer is always going to be the actual number, right? The number of stars out of 5, right? So a 4.6, like I think we're looking for high 4s, right? That's what we're looking for, above 4.5. And then the question becomes, well, what if I'm looking at 2 different watches on Amazon, something simple, and one's a 4.6 and one's a 4.7? Like, is that a big enough difference that you're going to choose the 4.7 over the 4.6? And I think the short answer is no, probably not. So what do you look at next? So typically I'm going to look at the number of reviews. So if something's got 17,000 reviews and it's 4.6, I'm probably going to trust that one over something with 30 reviews and has a higher rating of a 4.8, just because more people are saying that this is better. And 17,000 in itself, if you have something that's got 17,000 reviews, that in itself is a social proof that, wow, 17,000 people have looked or purchased or used this item. The other thing, especially in the restaurant world, I think, is the how recent was the last review, right? So we've all been to a restaurant that we absolutely love, and it's like a go-to restaurant, and then management changes or something changes where they source something from, and all of a sudden it's just not the same. And a review that is 6 months old, and that could be the most recent review, might paint a totally different picture of that place than what it is, today, 6 months later. And I think there's a point where all of us, if we definitely don't know, are going to start reading some of these reviews. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm, poring over every decision that I need to make is going to be a 15 to 30-minute thing. But I mean, there are times where we're like, oh, everything is great, except there's like a handful of like 1-star reviews, and we're going to probably go click on that and be like, hey, what's going on there? And sometimes they'll be like, oh, this person is overly sensitive, or this person is looking at things different than what I look at, and so you can say, okay, I can still trust this high rating. And you'll even do that with the 5-star reviews as well, or Google has a nice feature where they're going to put like the most relevant reviews on. I think those are the ones that are going to be front and center, and those are going to be valuable as well. That Bright Local is trust the 4.6 to 4.8. So the perfect 5.0 is a little suspicious, and I think we all have a perception that, or maybe at one time this was true, that reviews could be purchased, right? You could get 20 of your friends to review your office, and that'll give you a 25-star reviews that wasn't there as well. And that's actually a well-known phenomenon in the small business industry when it comes to reviews. There's also this idea that negative reviews can be deleted. I think that many people still believe that, and I think generally speaking, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm sure there is a way to, if you spend enough money, to get a bunch of people to do that. So long story short, a perfect 5.0 tends to be suspicious. A slightly lower rating can offer authenticity, right? Would you trust a surgeon who tells you they have 0 complications? And the short answer is no, because that's just a lie. If you're doing surgery, you're going to have complications. If you're a small business owner, you're going to have people who are not happy. You can't please everyone. So I think that's what this idea of that, hey, we do trust that slightly lower rating over the perfect rating. And then going back to the idea that limited negative reviews do add some credibility. So negative reviews in and of itself, not a bad thing. Again, unless there's like a huge glaring issue, like a deal breaker when it comes to a negative review. And then kind of the last meat and potatoes question, what happens after reading a review? What do you do? What does that customer do? What does that consumer do? What does that patient do? And the short answer is most people will go visit the website. So that's kind of that ecosystem we were talking about. Hey, we want to have an online presence that includes a website, that includes social media, that includes online reviews. The nice thing about Google being king is that there's a pretty seamless handoff from the Google review to your website. It's just literally a couple of centimeters away. Additionally, so many searches aren't necessarily through a referral, but if you're like, hey, I need an oral surgeon near me, that's a common one, or dental implants in, and then insert my city here. And so that's what then pops up. Some of that search engine optimization, some of that, hey, ranking on Google is going to come, through reviews as well. So you might be rated higher than your competitor down the street when your review picture is better than theirs. So I kind of just did it for myself. Oral surgeons near me from my search from near my house, and so it gave me some of the oral surgeons near my residence. The near me is definitely put it based on the actual distance away as opposed to the ratings themselves. But another version of that is dental implants in, a neighboring city, Novi, Michigan. And so then it will kind of give you the top 3 based on however Google's, algorithm works. But definitely it's picking people who've got higher ratings compared to people who have fewer ratings or a lower rating. All right. The whole picture with search engine optimization, or SEO, as a lot of people put it, it's a separate but related topic. And so, how do you increase your search ranking? How do you become that person who is not only on the first page of Google, but also near the top? It's funny because when you look at this information and the fact that the algorithms that these search engines use do change relatively regularly, online reviews, depending on where you look, are going to be a number 2 or a number 3 tool for Google or Yahoo or Bing to put that practice or small business near the top. The other part of that too is that reviews offer a way to add text, right? You can give somebody 5 stars, but you can also say they were the best place I've ever been to, and I've been to 50 places, or I drove 2 hours to come to this place because I really love them so much, or my 2 kids had their wisdom teeth taken out here, and I would not think of anywhere else to go for my third. And so that text is much more valuable than 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. Stars alone are not enough. And obviously, words matter. Words also, the content that you create online also provides, more search terms for that Google spider. That's, the algorithm for building the World Wide Web. So saying, hey, this is where we want to go. The more text that other people put on your behalf, the more terms that when people search for it can find you. All right, so let's talk about some of those practical tips on how to get online reviews. So, like I said, I probably started this journey in 2017, 2018. And it just started out with literally just asking people for reviews, right? So the way it started for me was, hey, I would do a post-op phone call or a post-op text message to all my surgical patients, and they would go like, hey, this is Anish, and I'm from Line Dental Implants, and I just want to check and see how you're doing. And they'd say, oh, yeah, I'm doing good. And I was like, hey, do you have any questions, concerns? How's everything going? Any problems? And somebody might say, no, everything's actually going really well. And so some positive thing, or maybe answer some questions. But if they give me something, some feedback, I can be like, hey, I'm glad you had a great experience. Hope you can give me some feedback. Here's a link to my review page. And so then I would text them that link, and all they would have to do is click on it, and then they could leave me a review. Now, one of the things I've learned is that for every, I used to do the numbers, but for every 30 to 40 of these that I sent, I would probably get 1 review. It still tends to be a pretty low yield thing. Building online reviews tends to be a pretty challenging thing. You definitely have to keep grinding at it. But I think there's in the last 7 to 8 years, I've definitely learned some new tricks, and we can definitely increase the rate at which we get reviews here. So let's talk about some of these practical tips. I'm guessing the stuff that you probably came for. All right. Let's start with the most obvious one. Texting is king. It beats everything else, right? We talked about asking nicely for reviews. Asking nicely, people are nice, but they've still got busy lives. Even if don't have busy lives, there are some barriers to logging in, finding your web, finding your site, clicking on writing a review, logging in, things that will take minute amounts of time, but there's still barriers nonetheless. So definitely I've seen Instagram Reels or YouTube Reels saying, hey, you guys should buy this product. It's a QR code. You put it right at your front desk. The patient can just hold their phone up to it. It'll link them right to it, and they're going to leave a review. You're going to get reviews left and right. And the short answer is, I've seen every variation of that and tried every variation of that. QR codes in my ops, business cards with an easy link for people to use and find. And even then, I'm getting pretty low yield, a low volume of reviews from those. And even though the story I said texting patients post-op, even though I would have it right on their phone, it still was 1 out of 30 patients who would give me something. So texting on your phone usually happens to be the best because most of those barriers are removed. If it's on your phone, it's already there, whether it's like a link that was texted to them or that was sent from your EMR. Usually, again, 40% of people have Android phones. They're already logged into Google. Roughly, 70% of people have a Gmail account. They're already got a Google account that they're logged into on their phone. And so all they have to do is click. Again, even if you send it to 20, 30 people, you only get one. The goal would be, hey, can we send it to everybody? Not just your post-op patients, or not just the patients that walk through your door. And then you get, by volume, you'll get more people who are leaving you, good online reviews. The bottom line is texting is king. I took the snapshot of my phone. It's actually only a couple of hours old, and it's like it's very telling and maybe a little bit embarrassing there. But for my email, I've got 26,000 unread emails, and this is not a phenomenon that's unique to me. When I first saw this experiment, we were in a room full of people, and all of us had a significantly larger number of emails unanswered than we did text messages, right? There were people who had like six-figure number of emails unanswered, but 26,000 unanswered emails versus, in my case, 12 unanswered text messages. Texting tends to be something that people see and respond to much quicker than emails. All right, automate it. This is by far the next most important thing. So whatever your practice management software is, just have your software send that link to the patient that says, hey, can you please review us if you had a good experience, or ask for feedback. And one of the things I do is I ask everybody for reviews. So there's this idea that, oh, maybe we should like cherry pick the people that we're sending it to. And I think I did that to some degree early on, but we experimented by just sending it to everybody. And so it's not just the raving patients. You can ask everyone and you'll just get a better sample of what's out there. You'll be surprised at some of the people who had a really good experience. These stoic individuals who you would never have expected were like so anxious, but you did a really good job, and they're going to let other people know with an online review, although they probably wouldn't have said it out loud to you. If you are worried about that, if you've got that problem patient, that person who is incredibly unhappy, the person who's got that post-op complication that you don't want other people to know about, you definitely can filter out, that individual from, most of these softwares. But generally speaking, I think asking everyone is a good habit. Again, you can ask hundreds of people and you're going to get a handful of reviews out of that in most scenarios. If you are worried about all the negative reviews you'll get, if you don't, believe me, I'm going to tell you one of two things is going to happen. You'll be surprised at how few negative reviews you get. The same barriers to, leaving a positive review are there for negative reviews as well. And so even if somebody didn't have the best time, it still will take a fair bit of effort for them to get on the phone and log in and go to your link and, put a negative review in. The other possibility, I guess, it would be that you do get a ton of negative reviews. And I have had people who, complain about this, or have talked to people who have complained about this. And again, I'm in no position to judge their practice if I'm not, in the chair with them or in the office with them. But, the thought would cross your mind. If this is something that you're frequently getting complaints about, maybe that is a problem in your practice. And hopefully, I know it's not easy, but hopefully you can transcend that and use that to your advantage as well. I think it's still a net benefit for you to ask everybody and to do it in an automatic fashion. Now, how do you do that? So if your software itself doesn't do that, and I know a lot of softwares do, but there's other patient engagement software. So that's just a fancy way of saying that, you've got a way to text your patients or send them messages about what time their, appointment is, or confirm, their appointments. And so I've used every single one on this list here. So I've used Podium, thought it was fantastic. I've used Swell, thought it was fantastic. I've used Birdeye, again, at different offices. And I currently use Intivio. I'm not here to say one of them is better than the other. And they've definitely got little nuances to them that sometimes make it easier or harder or get better results and things like that. But for the practice software that I use, Intivio just happens to be, checks more boxes for me. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I know they've got different ways to pay for them. You've got monthly options, which tends to be a little bit more expensive, or you can buy the whole year out. The last I tended to check on some of these softwares, if you just wanted something for reputation management, or kind of the idea of like, hey, we're going to send a link out for reviews, it tends to be somewhere between $200 to $300 a month, or $2,000 to $2,500 a year. All right. As for feedback, I think it's just like just a polite way to ask, to ask for this, right? So you could go out and almost like you're, you know, trolling or begging for, reviews. But I think it's a much more polite thing when you ask somebody. It's much more genuine if when your patient is done, you're like, hey, I hope you had a good experience. We'd love to get feedback from you. We're going to send you a link for a review. Um, Again, if you're only asking for positive reviews, it sounds like cherry picking. It feels a little bit slimy. Feedback is more authentic, is more genuine, probably also more valuable because then people have an opportunity to be like, hey, this is what I would improve or this is what you could do better. But also just the psychology of it is it makes patients feel heard and not like you're begging for their 5 stars. Okay. I think with this whole thing, I think I like reviews because we genuinely care about how we do, and we do want to improve on things. So if we were to get a whole bunch of negative reviews, if we get a negative review that tells us that our communication was poor, we are going to use that as an opportunity to get better. And then here's a tip that we did was involve your staff. I don't have a number, and I couldn't find a number on how much a review is actually worth, right? And so I gave that story about the young lady who came from Cleveland, but like the reviews alone, brought $1,000 case to us, right? It's just a singular example. I'm not saying that a review is worth thousands of dollars, but in aggregate, they can be. So I just try to do some back of the napkin math, and let's say a review is worth $20. Would you pay a staff member to $5 to if they are able to get a review? And so I did it as an experiment in my office. I learned that the staff became my advocates. I found that it's beneficial to them. And the way it worked is that, hey, Sean, if you can get the patient to leave a review and then also like call you out by name, then that's how you get the $5. Like that's how we know, you get it. It's beneficial to them. So, and this is a true thing. I don't know exactly how many reviews I have, but let's say it's between 400 and 500. Sean is absolutely mentioned in 50 plus of those reviews. But it's also just written documentation of her value, right? It's like something that she can use to prove like, hey, like my patients like me, I do good work, and she, provides some, pride in her assisting skills as well. And then just again, we can talk about leveling up strategies. One thing that Sean did, which you may or may not agree with, is that she would like let patients know that this was a thing. She says, I hope this was okay for you. We'd love to get your feedback. One thing that's helpful to me is that if you put my name in a review, then I get $5. And she just was very upfront about that. She did it in a way that did not feel slimy, and it was a way, and she got a lot of reviews that way. And I had to pay out a lot of money for that. But at the same time, it was like an interesting way for almost like her patient to tip her without actually having to open up their wallet. Sean, this is a picture of Sean over here, and that's the smile she wears all the time. I hope all of you guys can have a Sean in your practice. And not that she's got a tough life as well, and she like takes care of a lot of people. And I love asking her like, well, who takes care of you? And she always answers the Lord. And but that's it. That's the energy she brings every day, all the time. This is a review of somebody who says Sean was a hoot. She's great. She's always smiling, always laughing, and that positive energy is one of our core values, and that positive energy that she brings can be felt by patients as well, and they will also mention that in the reviews as well. All right. Use your review page like a blog. So first of all, do we even remember blogs? So it was a thing for a while. You would make a website for your small business or for your practice. You would hire a company or your webmaster to write posts for you once a week, right? And this idea is that you've got the World Wide Web, and Google's little spiders are crawling, from link to link to create that SEO to be like, hey, this is when you search for something, your website should go faster. But if you've got all these, let's say, one post a week for a year, you got 50 posts about dental implants and bone grafting and success rate and what you do differently. We use platelet rich fibrin, and we do this thing, and all these like links and all these words. And when the Google spiders come up, and when people are searching for something like dental implants, then since you've got more volume and more content, then your SEO goes up, right? I don't think blogs are a thing people do regularly anymore, at least not to the same level that people used to do. Because honestly, who reads the blog of their dentist or their nail technician or their restaurateur? it unfortunately tended to be pretty cookie cutter content, right? It had very little personality to it, and it's just some webmaster who's doing it for the dentist because they were told it was really good. So, anyways, use your reviews as like real stories. Use it as your blog. So these are real stories here. These are your patients saying something. The other really awesome part about it is that unlike a blog where you like almost have to like tell people, hey, you should check out my post. The best part about this is that people are already looking at your reviews, right? They're already looking at what you're saying. The pictogram I have here is it's actually a response to one of the poor reviews I got. I'm very blessed to have many more positive reviews than negative reviews, but this was a negative review, and it was related to communication, and the patient felt like we were pulling a fast one. She wrote beware and everything, but I had like a chance for somebody who's going to be like, oh, you've got hundreds of great reviews and you've got 4 negative reviews. I'm going to take a look at this negative review, but now I have a chance where eyeballs are actually there and I can like say what I want to say. I'm not fighting with this person. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm going to apologize to this person. But at the same time, I'm going to be like, hey, this is who we are. And I'm going to be perfectly upfront with you. Obviously you should still beware and you should still be cautious and be an advocate for yourself, but this is who we are. And I think it's really awesome that I've got a place that is not a blog, but at the same time is a space where people are actually going to look at this. All right, a couple of best practices for online reviews. Something that's come up more recently, at least has become more prevalent, is that you just got to make sure that you're not violating, our privacy, our privacy act here. So patients can waive their privacy. They can tell you, hey, your friend can tell you, hey, I went to this doctor's office and it was great, right? But the doctor's office can't do that, So patients can waive their privacy in an online review and tell you, what happened and that it was great and my root canal felt good and, my surgery went great or my kids, wisdom teeth came out really easily and they recovered good. But you can't respond back to them and let them know like, hey, this was a patient in my practice, because that is, protected information. So you just have to be very careful about that. So obviously don't use the word patient or, you can say thank you, obviously, but sometimes you do have to make it a little bit more generic. I tend to write my responses reviews soon after they do it, so I hopefully still remember that patient, and I can bring something else up like, oh, we talked about this band or this concert you went to and stuff like that. And I do notice that sometimes those people will comment back or even amend their review to be like, it's so crazy that you remember that. And so it's like a fun little mini instant messaging that we're doing there. All right. Obviously, just be careful of the privacy policies and your patients' protected privacy. So patients' names are and procedures are frequently mentioned in the reviews. I had an implant done. I had wisdom teeth done, but obviously don't confirm any of that. And it sounds silly, right? They are saying it out loud that, yeah, I had this done and my name is attached to this. But again, they have control over their own privacy, and we are not in a position to violate that. Just generally speaking, HIPAA is not something we trifle with. All right. And then just, again, 20 seconds on handling negative reviews. The internet is full of articles ad nauseum on how to do this. The short answer is that, the saying, don't have an argument with an idiot, because people will have a tough time telling, who the idiot is. So just start by not responding emotionally. It's probably a good practice to give it 24 hours or longer, take the emotion out of it. The reason there's so much emotion in it is because it is very personal, right? This is your reputation. So if somebody attacks that, it's pretty easy to get defensive. The easy first thing to do, apologize for the problem, make it right if you can. One of the things that somebody had a discussion with me about is that if you go to a restaurant and you order something and it's the wrong item, like that is usually not enough, at least for me, to like leave a negative review, right? So I will probably, everybody's got different strategies for this kind of thing, right? I know plenty of people just eat what they get. But at the same time, let's say you needed that, you ordered a steak, cooked, medium, and it comes back cooked well. You can let that server know, hey, this is not what I ordered, or if it's the wrong item completely. And most people are going to be understanding and accepting. And as long as an attempt is made to make it correct, you're going to be satisfied, or you're going to be at least understanding of it, right? It's when the server's like, no, you said this, or no, we can't do anything about that, or I can't fix that. That's when you get more peeved and upset enough to probably leave that negative review, right? So if somebody's already left a negative review, you can apologize for the problem. You can attempt to make it right. And I think that's a valuable thing. We're all humans. Things happen. Um, I think I'd like to be measured by the chances I've had to, fix any mistakes I've made. Don't take it personally. Generally speaking, you just can't please everyone, right? And so there's going to be patients that you haven't you haven't been 5 stars in their eyes, and that's just okay. Bury the negative reviews with positive ones. You get one negative review, get 100 5-star reviews. All right, and kill it with kindness. Have empathy. So the screenshot on the right is a facial pain review. I don't really do a lot of atypical facial pain, but got referred to me because the dentist was a good referral and didn't know what to do for this patient who, suspected that they had, trigeminal neuralgia. I said, yeah, I'm happy to see this patient. We did an exam. We figured out what the plan was going to be, but that patient was very disappointed. You can, see why they had to come in for an exam. They, took up their morning. We didn't solve anything, right? We said, hey, this is what we think is going on, and this is what we, do next. And they're understandably, upset. And so my response to them, which I'm realizing now after the fact, I didn't formally apologize, which I probably should have, but I was like, hey, can we make it right for you? I also didn't attack them and say, hey, we did lots of stuff. I just said what we did. Hey, we spent some time trying to solve this problem for you. We're going to go over and get it over to you. Like, we're still going to help you in the best way we can. And then I made this comment, which, I was trying to be empathetic. Like, I really hope your problem gets solved. And it's like where, text messaging and emailing doesn't show body language and empathy as well as, as in person does. So like, I realized that when I wrote it that way, it almost sounded sarcastic. And so I addressed that and say, hey, I know this may sound insincere, but I really, really, truly hope that things get better for you. And I really do. I genuinely want that person to be in a better place. And so, use empathy, don't respond emotionally, don't get defensive, go from there. All right. Let's talk about like the next step, the level up tips. So when you want to become an online review wizard, and I'm a dentist and that's my daughter there, and I guess I have to give the disclaimer, those are not her real teeth. We take better care of her teeth than that. So let's say you're in a position now that you've automated your online review system. It's on autopilot. You're getting regular reviews on a weekly basis. You're getting lots of positive reviews, or maybe you've joined a practice and have already got, 700 5-star reviews. So what can you do to like improve your review presence online in these lucky, blessed scenarios that you're in? So level 98 strategy. So like review your referrals, right? So you might be going off and pounding the pavement, doing muffin runs, dropping off goodies at an office. And when you get there, go and just like write a review for them, right? They would appreciate that. Our referral coordinator tries to do this with social media as well. When she drops something off, she'll like take a selfie with the team or outside their sign and then put it up on Facebook and say, check in. That's like the biggest complaint we've had when we're trying to start our social media campaign, or when we were like trying to get reviews. Like, it's just so much work, so much to think about, and like you don't necessarily see tangible results right away. But wouldn't it be nice if you did that for your referring offices? So this is our team. We went to a CE practice building event with our neighboring periodontist who we get along with really well. We're not cats and dogs all the time, right? And so we mark that, we post it on their social medias, and then we go ahead and we can review them as well. It's just a nice thing to do because, hey, also it could be reciprocated. So I think it's just a good practice management tip to use. All right, level 99 strategy. I saw this, I think it was on Instagram, but the ringer review. So if you've got 500 5-star reviews and no negative reviews, or you had only one 1-star review, wouldn't it be the one that probably gets the most eyeballs? So, I tweeted this idea. I had a friend come in for some treatment, and I was like, hey, you know what? Instead of, would you be willing to leave a review, or did you, leave feedback? What about this? Would you be able to leave me a 1-star review? and just like, make it amazing, but like sarcastic, make it funny, make it, have backhanded compliments and clever. And so the idea is like, oh man, this place is so clean that I probably could like eat off the floor, but they didn't have food for me. Or like the chairside manner was so good. I felt like I was, at a Ritz Carlton, too bad they didn't give me champagne. And so like, I'm not super great at, creating that, but at the same time, you kind of get the idea that you've got the eyeballs in this 1-star review. If eyeballs are there, hey, say something you want to say. It's also just kind of, fun or funny to do. Or like a more or less disingenuous way of that is to use that 1-star review as an opportunity to respond to something you want your future patients to see. So I showed you an example of that 1-star review I had. I called it like a blog post, but it was like a way for me to tell people what our insurance policy was and how it works, and so we are non-par, but guess what? You still can use your insurance. And I want everybody to see that and know that, and we'll submit their claims for them. That's like a hard message to get out in the first 2 minutes of a phone call. But if somebody's looking at they might already have an idea of it when they look at my reviews, right? Or if I want to, share my core values, I want to say, hey, we're an office that really believes in excellent hospitality and excellence in our work, or we value technology and education, or, and insert your core values there. We really value, safety, or we really have a fun environment where people are smiling. It's that way. Hey, this is a review that's going to, guaranteed to get read. And so if you've got eyeballs, use it. All right. So takeaways. I think the first one is be good at your craft, just like that, guy dancing over there. Then you can organically build good reviews if you're doing good work. Define good however you want. Ask for feedback, not a review. So just to be more authentic about something like this, a good lesson is that everyone on the internet is an author, for better or for worse. If we know that's the case, wouldn't it be great if they were writing stuff great about us? And that's where reviews come in. Review myths are mostly false and are worth working around. Use your team to your advantage. Get them to buy into to getting reviews. Use it as a tip. Pay them to do it. Focus on Google. Google's king, and if it's got 96% market share, then that's where you want to put. Those are where you put more of your. That's the basket you want to put more of your eggs in. Automate the process. That's probably been the easiest one single step to do to get more reviews. Is that hey, use software. Use those the patient engagement softwares like Podium, Intivio, Bird Eyes, Swell, to do that. And I think the other part of it is that with those ringer reviews is, have a little fun with it. Okay. The takeaway lesson here is what are reviews? Reviews are just a way to get your reputation out there. So a good reputation is more valuable than money. Obviously a very old concept as well. And I hope that all of you who were kind enough to give me your attention can go ahead and get your reputation out there the way that you would like. Thank you again. Thank you for Amos for letting me do this talk. And then thank you all for your time and attention for this. I'm happy to field any questions. As you know now that texting is much easier for me, so feel free to text me. We're also available by email, and my manager is going to be the one managing that. So liondentalimplants@gmail.com. And I'm happy to get any kind of resources or citations available upon request. Or if you want to know more about my journey, how I started with just texting patients to, I've used Podium and here's the strengths of that one, or here's the strengths of Bird Eye. I'm happy to discuss those as well.